Good morning. This is Ms. Billerbeck, and we're going to talk about 11.5 two-way frequency tables. So we've got some vocabulary here to learn. So we have joint frequencies indicate the frequency of a single option in one category. Marginal frequencies indicate the total frequency for each option or category. Joint relative frequency is the ratio or percent of the joint frequency, this frequency, over the total. Marginal relative frequency is the ratio or percent of the marginal frequency to the total. And then conditional relative frequency is the ratio of the joint frequency related to the marginal frequency. So we'll try to keep those all straight as we march through this last lesson of Envision Algebra 1. So we have the owners of a major food chain are planning to add a vegetarian item to its menu. What do the marginal frequencies tell you about the number of male and female respondents? What else can be inferred? So let's take a look at our information. All right, so we see we have a joint frequency here. The males liking veggie burgers is 50. The joint frequency of males liking veggie pizza is 40. And the total 50 plus 40 is 90, which is our marginal frequency. So margins of paper, remember that? So these are the margins of a frequency chart. Okay, so then in here we have our joint frequency. So females, there are 60 females that like the veggie burger and 75 females that like the veggie pizza. So that's what we can see. So this tells us about the number of male and female respondents, that we have 90 male respondents and 135 respondents out of 225 respondents. So in this survey of frequency chart, we see more women were surveyed than men, which is, this is a little bit, biased towards, so we should have done an equal amount of men and women. This gives us the total amount of people who like the veggie burger. This gives us the total amount of people who like the veggie pizza. So we had 115 like the veggie pizza, 110 like the veggie burger. So it's pretty evenly split right here. So we see more women. More women responded to the survey. Now, this is something we have to be very careful about when we survey. Certain people don't like to take surveys, and their opinion is just as valuable as the people who do take surveys. So this can be incredibly important in making decisions. So we have to understand that. So, so more women responded to the survey than men. So that's a little bit of a problem. And then we can infer preferences were very similar overall. Seemed very similar overall between the veggie burger and pizza. So that's why we have to delve into this or dive into the data a little more to figure out what do these numbers mean. So now let's take a look a little deeper into the survey results of that to see what it reveals about male and female customer preferences for veggie burgers. And then we are also going to look at how can you tell whether a greater percent of customers surveyed select veggie burgers or veggie pizza burgers. So let's take a look at that. So in this, we are looking at our percentages. So we see here, we have 22% here that like 22% of the males like the veggie burger. If we look at 50 males over the total population of people surveyed. So there were 225 people surveyed. So 22% of the people surveyed without looking at, splitting just men versus women. So that's 22% liked the veggie burger. 27% liked the veggie burger of the women over all the population of people surveyed. And on this one, we had 18% of the men liked veggie burgers and 33% of the women liked veggie burgers. So the women in the data survey was 60% versus the men were 40% of the respondents in the survey. Then we look at the totals here. Out of all the respondents, 49% like the veggie burger and 51% like the pizza. So it's still pretty, the veggie pizza. So it's still pretty split. So the veggie pizza's winning by just a tiny bit. So we probably want to delve a little deeper into the statistics to make a decision. Okay, so when we look at male and female preferences, 22% versus 18, so a little more men like the burger, a little more women like the pizza. So a few more men liked the burger. A few more women liked the pizza. Whoops, I put more twice. There you go. A few more men. Okay, so how can you tell whether the greater percent of customer surveys selected veggie burgers than the veggie pizza? Well, we looked at that as far as that's example 2. So there we go. So let's look at that one more time. So again, it says, how can you tell whether a greater percent of customer surveys selected veggie burgers versus veggie pizza? Well, we look at this marginal frequency down here, and we see actually they picked veggie pizza more than the veggie burger. So 49% for the burger and 51% won't like the pizza overall. Okay, so you look at that marginal frequency at the bottom. All right, so let's go to the next example. So using data from examples 1 and 2, a marketing team concludes that females prefer veggie burgers more than men do. Do the survey results support this conclusion? And what conclusion can be made about the veggie pizza preferences? So they're contending from the data that females prefer veggie burgers more than men do. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so we're using a conditional relative frequency. So this is saying 50 plus 40 is 90. So we're only looking at all the men. So here, so if you see the column, the marginal frequencies here is 100%. So our joint frequencies in here, we have 56% of the men like burgers, 44% of the men like veggie pizza. Of the women surveyed, 44% of the women liked veggie burgers and 56% like veggie pizza. So 60 of the 135 women surveyed liked the burger, 75 out of 135 women liked the pizza. So this says from examples 1 and 2, can we conclude females prefer veggie burgers more than men do? Females like veggie burgers more than men do? Well, it looks like the men like the veggie burgers more than the women do. So no, we cannot conclude that. No, the data doesn't support that. Oops. Okay, so it supports the opposite. Okay, that females prefer the veggie pizza more, as much as men prefer the veggie burger. There you go. And it also supports that women like the veggie burger just as much as they like the veggie pizza. But it looks like the veggie pizza just as much as men like veggie pizza. Okay, so what can we make? What conclusion can we make about veggie pizza preferences? So we can say that women prefer veggie pizzas more than men. Based on this data. All right, so let's go to the next one. So we have a marketing team also concludes there is a greater variation between men and women who like veggie pizza than there is for those who prefer veggie burgers. Does the data support this? And then we're going to look at what conclusion could you draw if the percentages for male and female customers were the same across the rows in this table. So what conclusion could you draw if the percentages of males and female customers were the same across the rows in this table? All right, so let's look at that data. Okay, so we have example 4 here. We have the marketing team also concludes there is a greater variation between men and women who like veggie pizza, and let's see, like veggie pizza. Then there is for those who prefer veggie burgers. Okay. So if we look at the variation here, there's a 10% variation between people liking this veggie burger. We have 45% like this veggie burger and 55% like this veggie burger. So that's a 10% variance between that. So there's not that much variance on the veggie burger preference. So we go to veggie pizza preference and we see that we have 35% like the veggie pizza out of the 65% that like this veggie pizza. So there's a 30% difference right there. So there is more variance between the liking of the pizza versus the burger. So that could be important when making a decision. So there's a greater variance. So there is a greater variation between men and women who like veggie pizza more than there is for the burgers. So yes, it supports this. Okay, so there is a greater variation of men and women liking the pizza right here than the burgers. Okay, so what conclusion can we draw about the percentages for males and for females across the rows? So we have 45% like the burger, 35% like the pizza, 55% like the burger of women, 65% of women like the pizza. So they're both 10% variant, which is very similar. So we can't make a determination on that. That's not a lot of change there. But we can make a determination, final determination on what product to sell based on this and this. So based on this, there's a lot of reliability that the veggie burger might be the best one to go with. So, so that's what we probably should go with. So let's see, where did the 110 come from? Let's take a look at that. So this 110 is 50 men over the 60 women like the veggie burger. So the 110 on the bottom here, see how this is 100% for this marginal frequency here and the joint frequencies. I'll have 110 right here. It's because 50 plus 60 equals 110. So then with this one, 40 plus 75 is 115. So we're going to put the 40 over 115 and 75 over 150. So that's where we're getting these percentages, by the way. All right, so we can conclude on the last part that there's very little variance. Very little variance between the rows. The rows of data. Okay, so I'd probably go with, based on this data, since everything else was very close, is supporting the veggie burger on the menu, based on this data. Okay, so that's what we're going with. So let's go to the last example here. We have a random sample of spectators entering a stadium where were asked whether they were cheering for the Bears or the Tigers in a championship game. What does the relative frequency of 65 over 230 represent in this context? And then we're going to look at, well, what does the conditional relative frequency of 72 over 137 7 represent in this context? So let's take a look at the screens. All right, so based on this, we're looking for 65 over 230. So 230 is the total amount of fans. So 65 over 230, this relative frequency represents that 65 cheering male Tiger fans over total fans that are attending in the stadium. So that's what it represents. So 65 male Tiger fans to total spectators. All right. So now let's look at the conditional relative frequency of 72 to 137. So 72 men were cheering for Bears out of a total men who were spectators. So that's 72 male, let's see, put a little less there, Bear fans to total male spectators. So that's what that means. Okay, so that's it for our two-way frequency tables, and it's also it for the Algebra 1 book. So congratulations if you've still been with me this whole time. Have a wonderful summer vacation. Bye-bye.